Thanks for tuning in to this episode of I Have Something to Say, where subject matter experts are unafraid and unapologetic about sharing their perspectives regarding issues that impact our lives. They speak up because basically they give a shit. So if you're tired of canned answers and want to finally hear real people cut through the BS and talk about real issues, this is the podcast for you. I'm your host, Sami Heyman Marrero from Urbander, and behind our mixer is our producer, Chris Majoka from UdoU. Welcome, everybody, and I am so excited about having this conversation with Lisa Cavalli. She's the managing director for BELatina, and this is like epic because we have a passion for publishing and for content, and when we spoke offline, it was like talking to a sister I didn't know that I had, because there's so many things in our past in working with multimedia and marketing and telling stories and building publishing platforms and that whole shift from print to digital and all of that yummy stuff. And welcome, Lisa. I'm so excited that we're having this conversation, that we're recording it, because I think it's going to impart a lot of insights into the importance of authentic narratives, right? And B, of why content is so important, and also why understanding culture and having cultural intelligence is something that everyone can acquire and infuse into their daily lives. So welcome, Lisa. How are
Oh,
you?
thank you, Sami. It's so amazing to be here. And, I am so grateful. And this topic is so near and dear to my heart, of course, being the founder of BELatina and actually the former founder of HipLatina. So, my first foray into it was HipLatina, and I call that my MBA, right? Learning about digital publishing and media was through HipLatina, and I was able to get it right with BELatina. So thank you again for having me on. I'm super excited.
Yes, this is fantastic. And I just wanted to, I mean, it's just fascinating, right? How you um decided to create these platforms to give an authentic voice to the Latina experience here in the US, particularly because you you are not Latina, right? And I love that you say that you're, Latina by proxy, but it's because you grew up in a community and that embraced you, loved you. You lived the Latino experience, making tamales, as a little girl, right? As part of this extended family. And so talk to me about
Yeah.
how
You know,
your
how
heart,
did this happen, right? How did
your
this happen? So
heart.
yeah, so a little bit of background, how I kind of refer to myself as Latina by proxy. It's kind of a sweet story. My father, when he remarried, when I was very young, I was 5 years old. He remarried a gal by the name of Mary Lou, and she was first gen Mexican American. And I was, like I said, five, and I was brought into her family as a young child and celebrated, the culture from 5 years old till now. I mean, it's super sweet. And, I have two older siblings that are Mexican American as well. The only tragedy I would say around it is that she didn't teach any of us Spanish at home, because I think that was of the generation that they were taught to assimilate and acculturate, not to speak Spanish, to teaching their children
Mhm.
Spanish. And I know that she, of course, knew Spanish from her mother and siblings, but it was not told or often taught at home. So that was a little tragedy around it. But everything else, was coming into this new family as a 5-year old in the 70s. was sweet as could be. I mean, I didn't know any different because everybody was the same in our
Mm,
family. And they embraced me, and it was very sweet as an only child. I still have my aunties my tias that are still kicking it around down in Southern California, and their backgrounds were in education. And one of the big things with my stepmom was around education. All of her sisters and brothers are highly educated. When my stepmother had passed a few years ago, she had started out as a nurse and through nursing school down in San Jose, at San Jose State, and then she pushed through her education at St. Mary's, and then when she finally ended her career, it was as an associate prison warden for the state of California. So education was everything for this family.
yes, absolutely. And it helps on that pathway to career advancement, to entrepreneurial advancement also, and exploration. And so I think it's wonderful. I loved hearing your story. And yes, you're a sister from another mister for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So and
That's
absolutely. And Sammy, when we spoke, it was absolutely that. I got off the phone. I'm like, wait a minute, what just happened? What? What? So to circle back on how did I get into the media business, right? So that's
yes.
that's I think a big thing. Well, my background prior to that was since I live in wine country, I live in Sonoma, California. um, Wine is everywhere, and I worked in the marketing side of the business, and the hospitality, and it was around luxury marketing, right? So luxury
Mhm,
marketing, how I was taught, you always start at the top in marketing, and then you can make your way down a little bit to the next level as you need to for wine sales. The type of
mhm,
wine that you're producing, and the type of bottle, and the customer and the audience. So that was a great education on moving into the media business. However, if I would have known the media business was this way, I'm like, would I have done this? Absolutely, because there's
yeah.
many stories to tell. So I was working in the wine industry, and a friend came to me with a white paper, and he had an idea, and he presented it, and it was called Hip Latino. And I'm like, no, women make the buying decisions in the home, so it has to be Latina. So I did a bunch of homework, saw that there was no one writing good content. Uh, what I found, I read a lot of, about, 7, 8 years ago, and this was 2013, 2014. I was reading NPR, and lifestyle content would have been Pop Sugar, and I couldn't find anything that reflected Latinas in a thoughtful, smart way. So
Mhm,
I saw that as, a spot to tell great stories, because I had stories from my childhood and from my growing up in a small agricultural community, and, seeing California the way we are, and seeing the other side of the US um, through Florida's lens, and
mhm,
through New York's lens,
mhm.
and New Jersey. It made me think that there's some amazing stories out there.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I just did a ton of research, started from the ground up, did it all by myself, of course, with my partner's idea, but built the site and started making relationships and started reaching out to
Mm,
people and started calling. And luckily, LinkedIn was my best friend, right? Because
yeah.
the people that you meet on LinkedIn is pretty amazing.
Mhm,
Um, Started going to conferences, starting meeting with people. I had a sales colleague that was from Puerto Rico, still is in
mhm,
Puerto Rico. Hired him as my sales executive, and he introduced me to some folks in the media space, and that's kind of where it all went. And then then I started surrounding myself with amazing people, and started reaching out to writers and journalists, and
mhm,
and they loved my story about telling these stories, and they joined in. And I'm super grateful that some folks that have written for me on the Latina site transitioned over to BELatina, eventually, and have dug in, and they know that we have a great opportunity to keep telling stories and keep being visible.
Yes, absolutely. What I find refreshing is that you encourage like the platform. And when I say you, I mean the platform, right? You totally get it that this is like a collective and that these stories need to be told. But what I appreciate from Be Latina is that you actually encourage to be bold, right? To really tell, be authentic, to talk about lifestyle, to keep it real, right? And to really explore all of these facets of being Latina. And I mean, we've got 20 plus countries, right? To tap into, and unique voices in terms of nuances of tradition and of experiences, right? But that it's something that really didn't exist. And sure, I mean, I come from the publishing world. I worked at People en Español, Glamour en Español, all of these in Espanol titles back in the day. And really, I feel like this is an attempt to not just showcase the stars like the movie stars,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Because
absolutely.
you know what I'm saying? So it's like everybody is a star, right? Everybody in our community is a star. And it's like, look what I can do. Look what I've been doing. Look at the impact that all of these people are really having in everyday real life situations, which has been for decades completely overlooked, dismissed, right? Aside from, the typical Telemundo or Univision story in the en Espanol world, right? This is an English language platform that is bringing it to the mainstream, right?
Yeah,
What has been mainstream all along. That's the beauty of it, right? Mm-hmm.
it's so great to hear you say that mainstream word, right? Because that
Yes.
is really where we sit. And thank you for recognizing that everyone is a star. Everyone is a star, right? And everyone has a story. Absolutely. We feature women making differences, that are innovators, that are change makers, right? That's who we look for. Like yourself, Sammy, you're a change maker as well. And
Thank you.
you came to us. I didn't know you. Your urbander story came to us. We wrote about it, and then and to circle back to that, every day I learn something new, and I'm so grateful for my editors and my writers and my journalists, because they're the ones that bring these stories to us, right? And I'm the last person who pushes the button every day on these articles, and I'm like, wow, I had no idea.
Mhm.
Another amazing Latina that I knew nothing about. And that's the most exciting part of it, right? Of course, there's tedious work of being a publisher and worrying about these other things. But I find my most passion and joy is around meeting new people and learning new stories about women who are changing the narrative, right? The narrative is so changed and it's
Mhm.
so amazing. I just, like I said, every day I wake up and I'm like, I can't wait. I can't wait to see what's going on. I mean, of course they bring me their pitches, but the pitch and the prose is very different than the end result of the story.
Yes,
So, yeah. So
absolutely.
no,
And
it's
and
it's
and
it's
that's the yeah.
amazing.
Yes, it really is. And the thing is, it's a shift that is unfolding right now in people becoming more uh bold and brave,
Empowered is the word,
empowered,
right?
allowing themselves also to be vulnerable, right? And to infuse that into their stories and being able to share that in a very courageous way. And I think that it's something that was really missing. Again, going back to having worked in the publishing industry, in the Hispanic media circuit, if you will, I just became aware in the last, I want to say, 5 years, about the disservice that a lot of Latino owned business conglomerates, have done to the U.S. Hispanic market and also to Latin America, right? By perpetuating some of the stereotypes, right? About that, the fair skinned Latino is the
I was going to say
rich.
the white presenting
Yeah,
Latinos. Yes.
exactly. Yes, is the owner of the business in the telenovela, right? In the novela, and then the indigenous looking maid, right, aspires to be with him, or by there's a stroke of luck, right, becomes his love interest or whatever, right? All of these cockamamie, plots, but it's a formula, if you will, right?
Well, and
And so
it's putting a bow on top of it and making sure
exactly.
that it's presentable. Like there was an article today that we published, and it was I think it was something the problematic for being a white presenting Latina, right?
Mhm.
And we dove into that topic as well, and it's been a topic that we've talked about many times, and it's crazy, and and I'm not
Mhm.
sure, and this is just to go back to when you're talking about the Telemundo days.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if you were aware of that latest show that was just put on ABC called Promised Land, and it was about Sonoma Valley.
Mm.
I had just caught wind about it, and I
Yeah.
watched a couple episodes. And I'm like, really? And it was about a high-powered Latino family that were rising, or that had risen up, and that it was more like Falcon Crest, meets a winery owner. It was very, it was on the air for a couple episodes, and I just saw that it went over to Hulu, which I'm kind of sad about because I think it would have had more legs if it was more authentic.
Right, exactly. Yes. And so now you prompted me into checking it out. So I'm gonna watch a couple of episodes just to, yeah, because it's sad, right? It's sad that it's that they put this glaze, right, over what's really
Totally.
happening in the Latino community, right? And so then it's not fair, it's not fair to our community, and it's actually stifled the growth. And so I hear so many Latino business people and leaders saying, oh, we're still invisible, after all these years, we're still, well, no shit, you're still
Yeah.
invisible, right? Because we're perpetuating these stereotypes. And what's sad about is that these business leaders are monetizing on it, right? And it's so at the expense of continuing all of these misconceptions and not wanting to debunk all these myths about the Latino persona, right? And about our contributions and about who we really are, right? It's sort of like a cheap buck in the pocket, right? And
Yeah,
just about
and that's yeah,
monetizing it, and it's over. I think that there's a big it's a rude awakening, because I feel that as platforms such as BELatina keep on popping up, and as producers like myself, right? And
keep
I know that
speaking
you
up,
produce.
keep speaking up.
Exactly. We're speaking up and just saying, no, away with the old, in come the new narratives, right? That have always been there, but now we're creating our own platforms, right? As small as they might be
Absolutely.
for now, right? To really um just create a new space, because it's not working anymore for us, and we are here and we are visible, and we need to just exercise this leadership, and practice this muscle of developing content that is going to land right in the modern day US Latino. It's like people are still stuck back in the 80s, and it's kind of getting old, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not only um it's not the authentic word, we've heard it, we keep saying it, and and I try to lean into the honest word. I think
Mm,
honest is almost as good as authentic.
mm,
Authentic, we see it, we feel it, but it's really being honest with the media, right? And
mhm,
when you talked about the vulnerability, we as women, we've been so programmed not to be vulnerable and not to be honest, because when we are honest, then we're whining or we're getting mad or we're doing this, And I had, I'm going to go off topic just for one sec because this is a very important thing that I was reading in Adweek yesterday. The Super Bowl happened. If anybody remembers, that was a couple weeks ago. There was a gal, that ad that was the Coinbase ad that everybody's is raving about, the little QR code going up and down
Yeah.
the screen. It's like,
Mhm.
wow, genius. But the agency who pitched that idea didn't get recognized.
Mm.
It was under, the bigger agency of record, and the little agency pitched this, and it didn't get acknowledged. And
Mhm.
the CEO spoke up, and it
Mm.
happens to be a woman.
Mm.
And when she spoke up, the only way that she could get attention is through Twitter. And
Mhm.
now people are paying attention. And
Yes.
instead of acknowledging that, great, she did this amazing job, I'm seeing pushback for people supporting her, saying that, oh, is she whining about it? Didn't she get her
Yeah.
credit? And it's
Mhm.
like, great, good gracious, right? Please.
Mhm. Yeah.
When are we as women,
Mhm. Mhm.
black, brown, white, yellow, green, whatever, we have to keep fighting, and this is one of the things that I lean into a lot with the women of color, yourself
Mhm.
included, my friend, is your voices are changing the landscape for everyone,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Because you're
Mhm.
being heard, you're
Mhm.
being bold, right? The word
Mhm.
that we're using.
Yeah.
um, you're speaking up where many of us haven't been able to speak up.
Mhm.
So I'm so grateful that that we've created this platform, right, that women
Mhm.
can speak up to, and that we're sharing these stories that women are speaking up. And I'm trying to think, who can we lean in on that have been very boisterous about speaking up. Anna Navarro,
Yes. Absolutely.
she definitely speaks up. And
Yeah.
Stacey Abrams, I mean, she changed the landscape, in Georgia, right? So
Yeah.
so those are some of the women that I lean into on, definitely standing up.
Yes.
And then the other gals that are local and changing the narrative, right? So we just have
Mhm.
to keep speaking up to have our seat there. Or
Yes.
actually, when we talk about mainstream, it's going to be our table.
Yes.
It's going to be, the cultural table.
Yes, absolutely. And how fun is that going to be? Right? How fun is it when you have all of these different perspectives, because it's a learning environment for everybody involved.
Every
It
day,
really
every day.
Yes, every day. Yes, it's awesome. I want to, yeah. And so I see it in the Latino community, right? I see that shift finally, right? Where we're seeing more Afro Latinos also included in
Absolutely.
advertising. That's never happened. You would never, ever, ever catch any of these Latino led advertising agencies across the nation including an Afro Latino in their advertising. It doesn't matter the brands. That it was just a big no no, right? Whether it was conscious or not, that's a whole other story. But it's this aspect, right, of colorism that exists within our own culture, that is now being how do you say pointed out, if you will, and highlighted, to try to mitigate it, right? Or at least the parties that are interested in mitigating it and remedying it and fixing it and course correct their ways. Whether at this point, it's again, I just feel it's like it could even be like a money thing, because now they don't want to lose this business, right? So now
Oh, well, absolutely, because that's the market, right?
they have to
Yeah,
be locked step, right? And so
yeah.
I think that the murder of George Floyd definitely
Oh,
changed the way we approach things, everybody, and I think that there's been more awareness, but on top of that, more action. And so some people are slower than others in taking action, but I'm just hoping that more and more people with each day open up these spaces where people feel safe in being
Heard,
outspoken. In
heard
yeah,
and seen, heard and seen.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So again, so I'm just going to reference what I just saw published on on our site, because again, it was just, it's present and you're speaking about it right now. LATV, which is Latino alternative TV.
Yes.
Just we just saw a press release that came out this morning that they do this series, I believe, Beauty and Shades, and it was exactly what you're talking about, an Afro-Latina series, a beauty series. And
No,
would we have seen that 5 years ago? No way.
no,
No
no,
way.
there's no way.
Right?
Mm-mm.
And the gal who created Rizzo's curls, would we have seen her face in Target 5 years ago? No
Nope.
way.
No.
No way. I mean, and
Mm-mm.
thank goodness that these gals and
Mm-hmm.
these folks that have the courage to do it on their own, and these are the entrepreneurs, right? They're not waiting for someone to come to them. They're doing it. They're building something for them, and then mainstream is coming
Yeah.
after them to
Yes. Totally.
capitalize on what they're doing. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, because that's what it is, right? At the end of the day, it's about the bottom line. But do you think that there's room here for purpose to be infused? Because I feel like there's a lot of purpose in all of these initiatives.
absolutely.
I almost feel like it's like this mobilization, like this underground mobilization of people with purpose, right? That are finally, since we're entrepreneurs, you included, right? So we're in this space where we're afforded that luxury and
The freedom,
liberty and freedom and liberty, right? To be able to do what we want. So the more we connect and meet each other, the more we're able to galvanize um this feeling of entrepreneurship with purpose and elevating this conversation so that way more people say, you know what, okay, let me drop my old ways. Hopefully, right, we can convert. This is almost like being an evangelical, right? It's like this is like our our little how do you say, sermon on, join us, join this change.
absolutely. It's
Yeah.
it's 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 so amazing, and 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 this is kind of silly to say, that I feel younger, right, when
Hmm.
we are around others that are making the change, right? And if I would have known a lot of this 30 years ago, would I have made the change? Of course, right? About empowerment and changing the narrative and inclusion. It's about inclusion. I was just talking to my son about this last night. I think I had seen another story or article about the Gen Zers, right? About how they're misunderstood, and how they're changing the ways that the traditional workforce and work days are. And I kind of took a step back and started thinking about it. And then I look at my son, who's graduating from St. Mary's as well. And, he's graduating with a double degree in computer science and finance. And he doesn't know what he wants to do. So it's hilarious that he had got into cryptocurrency. I'm like,
Hmm.
all right, kiddo, let's, be smart about this. And then he started seeing things change. And now he's into collecting baseball cards, right? So he feels a value to that. And then I look at him and I'm like, this is freedom for you. This is the work that he wants to do. That,
Hmm.
traditionally we would be, as parents, going,
Hmm.
when are you going to go get a job? When are you going to go buy a house? Um, but I think this generation is, they do have security. They do have a bit of security, probably not the security that we were told to get when we were that age. But it also is an awareness of acceptance, that they're accepting themselves and being honest with themselves, that this is a freedom that they have. And this is the more, how do we say it, coming together, infusion, like you're saying,
Mhm.
right? Because he's talking with folks in college, and on his in his room, in his chat rooms, with these baseball cards, and the folks are all there for the same love.
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't matter what background they have. And I
Yes. Yeah.
think that's, where the Gen Zers and the really young millennials are teaching us, the Gen
Yes.
Xers. I'm a Gen Xer. So,
Yeah.
it is helping me recognize that, we are all one, and
Mm-hmm.
we need to open up as one. And the infusion that's happening is amazing, and it's exploding. And that's part of the empowerment as us women telling these stories, in this narrative.
Yes, definitely. I think it's fantastic that you're creating this space that includes all of these diverse voices, right? With even within the Latina
Absolutely.
category, right? That also meets the intersections of gender identity and all of that. Because like I'm a fan now, right? But
Thank you.
also what I behind the scenes, I think that inclusion is fantastic, but maybe I don't think maybe you realize that you're also providing equity, like an equitable experience, because you're inviting writers that wouldn't have another outlet, right? Because you really don't have strict parameters of telling these stories, right? You're like, go out there and find, right? Find these stories. And you're giving these journalists and these writers and these content creators, right? Um,
Absolutely.
access to an equitable work experience in the sense where they're free, right? They're free to tell these stories in the way they want to present these stories. And I think it's fantastic. It's something that I'm sure they wouldn't find, right? In like, other news outlets.
Yeah, as you know, Sami, it is hard to get into the journalism side of it, but it's something that these, our writers and journalists live for. Um, Luckily, uh, I pick up my phone when people call, right? And
Yeah,
that's a very
yeah,
rare
yeah.
thing. And and I answer emails. A couple years ago, I received an email from a gal who was in Lyon, France. She is Persian Venezuelan, and she's like, I have a master's degree in art history. This is really my passion is writing. Would you mind, would you take a chance on me? And I said, absolutely. And she's been with me 3 years now,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
she's one of my star writers. And then I introduce, when I find out other publications through, my phone calls and conversations with folks, and she needed more assignments, so I introduced her to someone else, another, let's just say, a competitor. But
Hmm.
I love them and I want them to be successful too, so
Yes.
I introduced her to them, and now she's working part-time permanent for them. And it
Yes.
allows her to stay in France, to live, a very comfortable life, although during the pandemic they weren't allowed to go outside their home. But
Hmm.
it's the thing, we all just, like you say, we're giving equity to these, to everyone that steps up to the plate, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and another gal I just saw went to be a and she was my social media gal, and she was a writer. And one day I was having lunch in Palo Alto, and I picked up my phone, had no idea who the call was coming from, but I picked it up, and she's like, no one's hiring me. And I said, well, send me some stories, let's see what you can do. Then I hired her as a social media manager. Now she's senior editor at Ola magazine, and she's doing what
Hmm.
she loves. She's the entertainment side of it, which I didn't have much of, but that's what
Yeah.
she loves to do. And I'm seeing her fly all over the US now doing that. And another one of my
Hmm.
writers, when I had mentioned about Latina, that I was basing it on Pop Sugar, right?
Hmm.
She came to me working at Latina as a deputy editor, and now she is the multicultural lead at Pop Sugar. So
Yeah.
I'm seeing these amazing women, you know, step up through the ranks. And, and I think the old history of us, when we would quit a job, we were like scared that to tell our managers that we were moving on, and being worried about being blackballed or whatever. When
Yeah.
these gals, they know that they can come to me and say, Lisa, I have this opportunity. And I'm like, congratulations, don't
Yes.
forget about me, right?
Yes.
Because,
Yes.
I love what you're doing and I'm so proud of you. And every
Mm-hmm.
time I see these gals, being pushed up there with their content and articles, I'm the first one to say, great job. So proud of
Yes.
you.
Yes.
And it's
Absolutely.
important.
Yes, totally. And I think that that's something that we all can learn, right? And it's to really be encouraging of each other and pull away. And that's where you mentioned the Gen Zers, yeah, because I see my kids too, right? And I'm like, who are you?
Yeah,
It's like
what are
this
you doing?
stuff. Exactly. It's like, who told you how to talk like that, right? And it's because, yes, I think they're breaking free from peer pressure, for example. I mean, there's that still exists, right?
Of
But
course.
I think they're very mature for their age and are more accepting and just not interested in this talk about discrimination and all of that. Like,
Differences.
yeah, then differences. They're like, what are you talking about, right? Because they're not, I mean, it exists, right? I mean,
Yeah.
let's not, it does exist, but I think that we're seeing more and more that the younger generation is just tired, I think, of hearing, what's going on, and they're rebuking it. That's a good word.
Yes, yes,
They're
yes. They're
rebuking it.
blocking it. They're putting the block on it.
Yes,
Yeah.
totally. Yes, yes. So it's fantastic. I think it's just great that these spaces and thank you again for creating BELatina and for listening, because that's most of what you do. You're just like a conduit, right? You just listen and see that what are the stories that should be told, and then you create this space where they can unabashedly, unapologetically, and as bold as can be. And I want to thank you for that, Lisa. I think it's a fantastic thing, and I'm sure that you encourage others, right, to be part of this big family and create more of these spaces. Correct?
100%. I just had a call with another uh what do we say? Another site that just popped up called Latinamedia.co. I had a
Mm-hmm.
conversation with them last week, and it was these two amazing gals from San Francisco who are in the communication space. Again, they saw a space that they knew that they had their voices. They started it 2 years ago, and
Yeah.
I had a call with them last week just saying, I want to talk to you. I want to know more. I want to feature you guys. I'm so proud of you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for women to step up and do that, again, not knowing, when the website portal business all came around, we thought it was this huge thing that you had to have teams and teams of people building these portals. Well,
Yeah.
you're looking at the team right here, me and my editor, right?
Yeah.
And you look as big as you are, and it's silly to say the term fake it till you make it, but
Yeah.
we kind of have to,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and to get the attention of folks. One of the narratives that, and I don't want to take too long, but I do want to say one other thing is, one of the narratives, and I think you and I had this conversation, that we have our Latino and Latina leadership, really helping everyone along and making the brands realize and making the agencies, listen, and the multicultural side of it. But then we also need their support on looking at the smaller publishers, because what's just as important is where those ads and that content is placed, because
Yes.
we are the publisher that makes sure that we write the content and the audience comes to us, right?
Mm.
And so that's going to be my next soapbox, is bringing that to the multicultural mainstream, I guess is what we should say, is that
Mm-hmm.
you need to place it where the actual legacy audience sits and
Yeah.
reads,
Mm-hmm.
and not just, and I bothers me to say this word too, and I think it from your media days, is the pray and spray, that the
Yes.
wider is the better, but quite honestly, it's the opposite. Because if
Mm-hmm.
we're building our legacy audience through the content that we write,
Mm-hmm.
that is where the alignment, you would think, would be with the brands and the agencies putting their content where these women are reading the articles.
Yes, absolutely. And it's that
Instead of,
access, yeah, and
yeah,
visibility and exposure. Mm-hmm.
yeah. I mean, I go on LinkedIn, my Facebook, I call LinkedIn my Facebook, and I see our leadership, our our multicultural leadership sharing content about our community from the Huffington Post,
Right.
from Good Housekeeping, from these other, mainstream publications, when we're side by side writing the same content, if not even better, because we are the Latinas, the US Latinas writing for the US Latinas, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
that's the
Mm-hmm.
important differentiation as well, is that
Mm-hmm.
when folks, a lot of the times they think, the easy or more inexpensive way to make their publication profitable is
Mm-hmm.
by hiring non-US based Latinas. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that's wrong, but if they're writing for US based Latinas, they don't always get what we're talking about, right?
Exactly. Yes.
So,
Yes.
so that's going to be my next soapbox, is
Yes.
talking to our leadership, or our community, for working with smaller publishers that really have the ear and the eyes of
Yes.
our audience.
Absolutely. It's like you literally have the pulse, your fingers on the pulse of the US Latina experience because your writers are US Latinas. Yes. So
What
this is yes.
100%.
Yes, yeah. So this is not like a canned show. This is not a formula. This is no, this is like living, breathing, everyday stories of impact. So I'm so thankful to have had this conversation with you and to have met you. And I know this is going to be like, an epic platform. Is just going to continue growing and growing just by virtue of the growth of the Latino segment. The census numbers don't lie, right? And also because you're doing the yes, I know, and because you're doing the right thing. You're absolutely doing the right thing in empowering Latinas to tell their own stories. So I really want to thank you, Lisa, for joining us today. It was just a fantastic conversation.
Thank you, Sami. It has been my pleasure, and I'm so grateful to be seen, right? So thank you for finding me, and I am so grateful to have been part of your world as well. Thank you, Sami.
Thank you. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you. You too.
This concludes this episode of I Have Something to Say. We want to thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to tell your friends about us. We're on Spotify and iTunes as well. There's more to come next week. And remember, if you have something to say, it's time to speak up.